All right. There we go. So this training today is for uh, staff members who are facilitating ARDs, typically LSSPs, diagnosticians, speech pathologists, to walk you kind of slowly through the process from beginning to end. I don't know if anybody noticed, but this is part one of three. There's a part two tomorrow and a part three um, Friday. I think that's, yeah, today's Wednesday. Um, that will go through it slowly. Feel free to ask any questions. I know I did a quick overview last week with new evaluation staff, one of the days last week. And then y'all went through an ARD boot camp, but that was probably a whole lot of information for your very first week in the district. So we'll try to take it a little bit slower.
Yeah, I went through Stride. I got it.
Okay, and if you can mute your mics because there's some feedback for me.
Oh.
Thank you. So to get to an ARD, you're going to click Special Education. The option is ARD Forms. It's pretty self-explanatory there. Of course, I've timed out because I'm doing a training. That's just how it would go. Okay. So let's try that again here in a second. You go to Special Education, and you go to ARD Forms. And then it's going to pull up what I think I told y'all was the Student Select screen, where you're able to search for your students. If you're doing an annual ARD, an initial ARD, things like that, you would have a draft record created. That's just the process.
Yeah,
it'll wipe out the PLAFs, the goals and objectives, and the deliberations so that we don't have anything carry over from one year to the next. And we typically, our recommendation is that the draft is created at least 2 to 3 weeks prior to the ARD being held so that your case managers have time to go in and generate the PLAFs and the proposed goals and objectives to get them home to the parent. Because our expectation is that the teachers send them home at least 5 days prior to the meeting. They can't do that if there's not a draft open. You can open them 4 or 5 weeks early. That's not necessarily a bad thing. What we don't want you to do is open them now for ARDs that are in May, because data will get lost. And that's the last thing we need. That makes my day and your day a whole lot longer when that happens. So I've gone in. Did everybody see how to create a draft record? Did they show y'all how to create draft records for facilitating ARDs? No? Okay. So I will pick, find someone who didn't. Okay, we're going to pick Elizabeth 1 Fake. So this would be her active record. This is, and I'm picking the reason. I'm writing the student's IEP. This is everything that would have been in her ARD last year. Let's say she's coming up for an annual ARD for this year. You're going to scroll down, and you don't have all of these screens, but you're going to scroll down to right around 109 roughly. Nope, it's further than that now. Okay, so for me, it's 121. It's process draft record. You're not going to mess with any of these buttons here. We have it predetermined at the district level. You're just going to click this button that's create draft. It's going to say, are you sure you want to create a draft for this student? You say okay. Takes it a couple seconds. And then there we go. My internet must be slow, huh? So now you can see there's a draft record. So when I go into this draft record, this is where I'm going to go to prep everything for my ARD. Okay, I don't know what that's got to do with me in an email. Sorry about that. I'm writing the student's IEP. The beauty of the cloning the record for a draft is all the little check boxes and radio buttons that you have to check. If they were filled out last year, they're still there. The teacher has to put a new PLAF in, new goals and objectives, but the schedule of services is there from last year, so you can look at that to kind of get an idea of what it may look like for this coming year. If it's the same, you just have to update dates and move on. But it takes you to your student information screen. I want to make sure, yet again, that you're on the right student. You could click next like 8, 9 times to get to the beginning of ARD, but beginning of ARD starts typically screen 9, 10, 11, depending on your role. You'll have date of meeting is the very first thing you're going to do. You're going to put today's date in there. I have to look at the date again. And then when I hit enter, this is very important because if not, you end up with lots of emails from me. And then people get scared because they think they're in trouble and they're not. It's just a matter of making sure our data is correct before we turn it into TEA. If it's an annual ARD, I'm going to say yes. A lot of people get scared because it popped up and they hit cancel and it doesn't update this date here. And that's when they get an email from me because it looks like the annual ARD is overdue. So if I click OK, it updates this current annual review date for me and changes the due date. If I don't do that, if I click cancel, it would have kept the 2019 date that was in here and it would have shown that one was due last year. And then that pulls up on a report for me every Tuesday. And I email the campus, hey, I'm sure it's a date issue. Please let me know when this ARD was held. Fix that date for me and move on. Duration of special education services, you want to make sure that you update this because if not, reports that you try to run on kids as far as services and whatnot do not work correctly. And I can't even put in 2020 correctly. All right. Long day. It's not Friday yet, is it? Not close. So I'm just going to make sure I go from ARD date to ARD date. And then I answer, is an interpreter needed? Yes or no. There are a lot of students in the district who an interpreter is needed. It's typically Spanish. It's typically your appraisal clerk on your campus that speaks Spanish and will translate or interpret those ARDs for you. If it's a language other than Spanish, contact, I want to say it's Esther Tobar. Her email is Maria Tobar, but she goes by Esther. Don't call her Maria or you get a mean look. I found that out the hard way. But you would send those requests for an interpreter into her for Vietnamese, Urdu. We've had all kinds of other languages pop up, and we contract with an agency. If there is an interpreter, I'm going to say, what language was it? Typically Spanish, and the parents were provided with an audio recording. Because if it's in Spanish, we want to record it so that we have a copy. And then we also send a copy home to them of the translated ARD where the interpreting was done. Then we've got the FIE date. You want to make sure those are correct because if not, you get emails showing that the evaluation's overdue from me. Want to make sure that we're not overdue on any reevals. We don't use boxes 1 through 8. The report dates, everything should be, the full individual evaluation should be a comprehensive evaluation. We're not going to have one separate that says, oh, I did an OT report here, I did academic, I did intellectual. It's all included in the FIE. We don't use this read option down here. I don't know if the team leaders, when you did the ARD boot camp with them, went through that. But our reads are done in the read/evaluation application, and I'm not going to cover that today. This is strictly about ARDs. So I work my way down the screen, and then I click next. I go to the next screen. We've got any information. Typically, we're including information from parents' concerns. And please don't check that. I always say we discuss parents' concerns when doing an ARD because I wouldn't want to say no. We're just not going to listen to your concerns and do what we want anyway. And that's kind of what it looks like if I don't check that we're discussing parent concerns, information from school personnel. But check whatever one's appropriate. Only the ones you check print. So it's not going to print all these other options if you don't check it. Additional evaluation is needed. You'll take care of that in the read evaluation application to know whether you're needing additional evaluation. There's a whole score meeting process that team leads at some point will go through with you. Then you get to the most important section for me is you've got to say yes or no for the disability conditions. If you check does not meet, it's a D and Q, and you're going to say no, no, and no on the screen, and then skip to the end of the ARD. Those are going to be your favorite shortest ARDs when the kid is dismissed or D and Qs. But if they qualify, you're going to say meets, and then you check which criteria they met or which disability they met the criteria for. And then you move to the second question that by reason of the disability, there's an educational need for services, which is we determine condition as evaluators. The ARD committee determines educational need. So you'd answer yes or no. And if the answer to yes or to both of those is yes, and that you don't have any exclusionary factors, then yes, the kid meets eligibility criteria. What I see happen often is that you check it up here and you check yes here, and then people leave this blank and don't put the disability in, and then can't figure out why it won't let them make the draft active to archive it. And it's all this box here. You had to say meets again. Tell me they have a primary disability. If they have a secondary, you would check it. I click my pencil paper icon, and I could say the kid's LD SI as of so I'll show you what I just did there because that was really fast. Now the kid has a primary and a secondary disability. If I click the pencil paper icon, that's anywhere you see a pencil paper icon, that is a PEMS element. All PEMS elements must be filled out with the exception of secondary disability, tertiary disability, and RDSPD provider. If those don't apply, those are the only ones you're allowed to leave blank. The checkbox over here to the left of it allows it to print on your paperwork. So it may look right in the system. If you don't click this box and you go to print it to give it to a parent, it's not going to have a disability listed on the bottom of the first page. Often I see people say, well, there's not any multiple disability, the kid's not medically fragile, I'm just going to leave it blank. It won't let you do that. The system will throw errors for you. It doesn't automatically assume no. You have to go in and tell it no. If there are more than 3 disabilities, which we have quite a few kids that's the case, in the notes right here, you could add fourth disability is typically fourth disability speech impairment, and it doesn't fit, and it's going to throw an error for you that we are okay with, because you're going to say the kid gets speech services later in the ARD, and it's going to say, but one of the top 3 disabilities isn't speech impairment. We typically know who those kids are. There's about 16 of them in the district. So I navigate my way through this page. I go and click next. The development of IEPs. This is not your area unless you are the teacher. And I won't walk you through how to enter a goal or PLAF. I did that training yesterday. If you want to know how to do that, that is another training in September. But it's a rich text field. It works just like a Word document online. As the evaluator who's facilitating the ARD, you want to make sure there's a PLAF in there. Don't let the teacher say, oh, well, I have it in a Word document, or I'll get it in there later. All the stuff should be ready by the time we come to ARD if they're meeting the expectation of having it to the parent 5 days ahead of time. Because you can't write goals and objectives without a PLAF. Like, we can't work backwards. We should always say yes if it's an annual that we reviewed achievement on last year's goals. Please don't ever say no. No, we didn't look at the kids' progress. We're just going to make up some new stuff this year. That doesn't fly. Transition, if the kid is 14 or is going to turn 14 prior to their next annual ARD, you would discuss transition. If you want more information on what goes in the transition supplement and graduation, at our high schools and some of our intermediates, we've got transition counselors. They take care of that piece of the ARD document. And our district-wide transition teacher, Don Zelinka, does very good trainings with the high schools and with the transition counselors on exactly what should be in there for transition and graduation. If you're elementary, middle school, consider yourself lucky. You get to skip this. Say it's not age appropriate and you get to move on. Then I click next. Then I get to behavior and language. Does the child's behavior impede his own learning or that of others? Yes or no? Here I shouldn't, if the kid has behaviors that are impeding his learning or others, I will say this as an LSSP by training myself. If I say yes, that he's got behaviors that impede his learning or others, I should see it at the minimum, I should have some behavior goals to work on that behavior. There are times that I may see behavior goals and a behavior intervention plan. I shouldn't say yes, that it impedes his learning and others, and there's nothing to address the behavior that's impeding his learning or others. You have a box here that you could type in if you wanted to. There are supplements for behavior plans. Down here, we don't use the FBA, the BIP, or the BIP brief pages. So if you try to go to them, it's going to tell you it doesn't exist or there's an error. We use the FBP in Pasadena, and some of our LSSP team leads have trainings on that, on how to appropriately complete FBPs. But if you're going to fill one out, make sure you say yes here. Then we've got the statements regarding discipline and student code of conduct. You would read those and make the appropriate selection depending on the student. Then we've got something regarding dyslexia. You'll come to that later. There's another screen. We've got language needs next. The student is or is not a second language learner. If they are not, a lot of the rest of this is none, and you don't have to do anything. If the kid is a second language learner, which is a lot of our students, can they be met through bilingual ESL, oral, sign language, total communication? You don't have to make this information up. There's an ARD LPAC collaboration meeting for every student who's special ed in LPAC that should happen between your LPAC administrator and somebody in your special ed department, typically the CBE or department head, prior to the ARD happening. So you get the information from that collaboration form that they use and use that to answer these questions. I get the call all the time. What do I put here? And my answer is very quick. I'm not an LPAC certified person. I have no idea what that committee said for that student. You'd have to ask somebody on your campus for that. So use that form. If they're not new on the campus, especially LPAC administrator, they are very familiar with that form. We talk about it a lot in principals meetings. Once I fill this page out, I click next. There we go. Then I get to communication needs. Is the student's communication adequate, or do they have communication deficits? If they do, in their speech impaired, your speech pathologist will take care of putting something in here. Typically it's a quick blurb, or it's information from their evaluation and their therapy sessions with them regarding the kid's communication needs. If it's adequate, you check that box and you're good to go. If the kid has an auditory or visual impairment or autism, you check this box here, and then it gives you blue go-to buttons. So let's say the kid had autism. I'd click this, and I can click this blue go-to button. It'll take me to the autism supplement, the first page. So I'd fill out pages 1, 2, and 3, because there are 3 of them. I'll show you. 1, 2, and 3. You fill out. The LSSP should do that typically in conjunction with the case manager. It's not all on the LSSP to fill out. It's not all on the case manager, but some of our teachers who work in classrooms with kids with autism, they see the kid every day. So they're a better source of information for what the kid's needs are regarding the autism supplement. So I'd fill that out. Then I've got this nice little button here that says return. I don't have to remember what page I was on. I do my supplement, click return, and it takes me right back to the screen I was on. Then I go to physical needs of the student. The student exhibits no physical limitations. If that's the case, great, check it. The student exhibits limitations but doesn't require modifications. If that's appropriate, you check that. And then they have physical limitations that may affect access to, or they take medications at school. And hopefully, before I move from this screen, if the kid is AI or VI, hopefully before this point you've realized that, and you have an AI or VI rep of the teacher there at the meeting, because if not, you can't have an ARD on an AI or VI kid without them. So hopefully before you get here, but this should be a reminder if I'm having to fill out the AI and VI supplement or check this box, let's look at the table and make sure my AI or VI teacher is here. They'll check this box typically because they give them information regarding Texas School for the Blind or visually impaired. Then we get to assistive technology. Do they need it? Yes or no. Student will not be able to participate in the educational program or additional information is needed. Check whichever one's appropriate, and then you would explain in this box. We have an assistive technology team. I think Jessica Alanis, our coordinator over speech services, does a lot with the assistive technology team. So if you have questions on who to contact or who's your contact for schools in your feeder pattern, get with her. I'll see if I can get a document, but I haven't seen one as far as who with assistive technology is working with which feeder pattern or things like that. So I fill this out, I click next, and it's a summary. What areas does the kid's disability impact him in? I've never seen a kid whose behavior only impacts him in language arts. If it's a behavior in an emotionally disturbed child, it is probably in every area. Reading can impact you in math and science and PE and Korean tech as well. So you check whatever's appropriate. If you needed to add notes, you could. I haven't seen a whole lot of notes added here over the years. Then I click next. We skip this page. I'm not even going to explain it, just skip it. Because this is for our PPCD or early childhood special ECSE kids. They just changed that last year. So our ECSE children, they fill out PLAFs just like everybody else. They can access the child outcome summary form that they have to do later in the year here. Then we get to goals and objectives. How to write goals and objectives. I did a training on that. I think, Lucas, you were in that training. I did that yesterday. I'm not doing that again. So there are training documents on how to put goals and objectives in. Teachers are trained on that as far as what content should be in a goal and objective. And I did the training yesterday, and I will do one every month. Your team leaders will be sharing all of my trainings for the 2020-2021 school year with you at your feeder pattern meetings. But they basically click add new goal, walk through the process, add objectives as they need to, and hit save. As the person facilitating the ARD, you want to make sure that there are goals and objectives here. You don't want to get to this point and, like I said with the PLAFs, oh, I've got it in a Word document, or oh, I'll get the goals and objectives in later. That should all be done ahead of time. Once, and if the parent has reviewed, if they've gone home 5 days ahead of time, you can ask the parent, okay, here's the goals and objectives. Did you have any questions regarding the proposed goals and objectives? If they say no, you can uncheck the box on the goals that says draft and say accepted by ARD committee on each goal and move on. You don't have to review them in depth if the parent doesn't have any questions and has had a chance to review them prior to. Then we get to accommodations, and we're getting towards the end of the training because I'll stop after I show you accommodations, and tomorrow we'll pick up right after accommodations through the schedule of services page. So accommodations, are accommodations needed for this student? I'm assuming the answer to this for every kid in special ed is yes, because if it's no, I'm kind of wondering why we're having an ARD. if it's no, skip the accommodation screen. Once again, I don't know why you're having an ARD if you're getting to skip accommodations and the kid gets nothing. You want to check and make sure that your special education, the duration of services, you entered that on that very first screen if you remember in ARD forms. It's the same thing. If you change it here, it will change it there. You want to make sure it's correct. If you're having a revision ARD to add or remove accommodations, you could put the date of the revision ARD here and make the changes accordingly. For assistance in implementing this IEP, I would check this. If I had a case manager listed, if they've gone in like they were told and put themselves as a case manager once they get their caseload, their name would pop up. It would say, please contact James Frost for questions regarding implementing the IEP and accommodations. Language of delivery, you've typically already done that. English, there are no special language programs. That was from the LPAC page where we talked the ARD LPAC collaboration. Behavior intervention plan, you've already talked about behavior and hopefully gone to the behavior plan. This is just a place to check it again. If the kid has one, make sure it says yes. If they don't, make sure it says no. Once again, if you change it here, it will change it everywhere else that you've said behavior plan. Assistive technology, you addressed on a previous screen and said yes or no. No need to mess with that here. We don't do anything with accommodations right here on this screen. That would just be a text box listing stuff. And that doesn't tell me anything. We would get to then personal care services, yes or no. If the kid gets personal care services, you would say yes. You can add the personal care services by clicking this box: diapering, dressing, orientation, personal hygiene. That's typically more for our low functioning, sometimes in our ABLE classes, PPCD, success or life skills classes that we have. Is typically where you see more personal care. I have seen personal care services for kids with ADHD because they get frequent prompts to stay on task. There's also an ARD supplement for personal care services. I will ask that when we're audited for SHARs, they look at it. Don't just check the boxes and say that he gets personal care for diapering and toileting and transitions without, on the personal care supplement, explaining to me the rationale and why he gets it. He gets assistance with transitioning and toileting and self-care because of low cognitive skills. The justification for why we do that. Does that make sense? All right. So after that, we get into the next screen, which is called Accommodations List. We started transitioning to this the beginning of last year. We used to have 6 screens where you would do check boxes of accommodations. And you could see all kinds of accommodations that people might request in a meeting. We've gotten away from that. So this year is the first year we no longer have those lists. We have our new accommodation list screen. So I start with adding a subject. I can say English, add, and I'll show you. It's adding them here. I've already added the class of all classes. I can add each individual one, or I could say he gets this accommodation in every class. But if I'm being specific with accommodations and he gets some for math, some for English, we would put it here. If there's a need for a custom subject, you could put it in here, put an abbreviation and add. But if you're finding yourself having to do that a lot, call me, email me, and we'll get it added to the drop-down list. So you don't have to keep typing it and clicking add every time. So I've got my subjects. I want to make sure I do that first. Then I've got my topic. Am I doing adapting classroom instruction, adapted or additional materials? If I do adapted classroom instruction, let's say the kid gets clarification, I can select, I'm going to select a couple of them. I can hit control and select all 4 of these, click add, and it puts them all here. The common mistake that we see in our office is this deceptive radio button here that says all and it looks like it's checked. People will stop there and say, oh, I've got my accommodations in here. I don't know why they're not printing on the paperwork or on the teacher bundle when I print it. What's the problem? because this is a radio button. I have to click it, and when I click it, it adds it to every subject that I've added. So you want to make sure that that's done, then that will print on the page. If I'm looking here and I don't want this accommodation, I click delete. Are you sure? Say okay, and that accommodation is gone. It's much easier to use. It's organized. If I were to go alter assignments, it now gives me a drop down of here's the accommodation. Pretty self-explanatory. I'm gonna stop there for part one because we've got about 7 minutes of the training left. I'll open it up for questions. I know I tend to go through this pretty fast because I live and breathe and do eSPED all day, every day. So if you've got a question, feel free to unmute and ask away.
I have a question. Does the LSSP complete the personal care services, or the appraisal?
The teacher.
The teacher completes personal care.
Yeah. If it's a success class or an able class, it's typically the teacher that works with that kid that's completing personal care services. It's not typically the LSSP.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
I have a question also.
Right.
For the training videos, because I know a lot of times it's a lot of information. Where would we find the training? Maybe you said this and I just missed it, but where would we find the training video?
I did not say it, so you didn't miss it. I'm recording this session actually, and I'll send a copy of this session out to everybody who was in attendance. I'm also going to post these videos in our district resources. When I log in on the home page,
yes,
there's a district resources. We've got our special ed handbook in there. I believe there's a folder that's got training videos that I've created in the past of different things that we do. I'm going to post my Zoom recordings in there as well.
Will yesterday's recording also be in there?
The one I recorded yesterday?
Yeah.
Yes. I recorded the one on PLAFs and goals and objectives. I'm going to post that one in there as well. And then I'm going to share that with the specialists so they can get it out. They've got, a lot of them have Google Classrooms for their teachers that they support. I'm going to get that out to them as well so that they can share it through multiple methods for you to look back on. We've also got training documents that go step by step with screenshots of how to do it. That's actually, if you click, hold on, I need to move this window. Okay, there we go. Okay, if you see this little question mark up here, I had to think about what that was called. Do y'all see that up in the top right of your eSPED screen? You should. If not, email me and I'll look at your account access and make sure that you have it. But in here, I can go to frontline support and I can do, like that screen I was just on was called accommodations list. And you're gonna go to an ARD and be like, I don't remember what he said on how to do that. Accommodations list. Really? It's going to pull up anything. And of course, you can search by subject. It didn't pull that up. I know it exists because I've seen it. Under ARD forms, unless they removed it. I'll send you the one I have because it's not, like I don't see it on here, which means they probably haven't uploaded it. This is managing. Maybe that's so.
Are theirs very similar to what we're required to do at Pasadena, or is it sometimes not?
Those are general. They're general descriptions on how the system works. I haven't found any of them that are too far off on how we tell you to click through the system. The content, though, would be your specialist. If it's resource, SF, ABLE, BSS, whatever it is, they would be the one to be able to tell you, here's what content goes in there.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Now is your time. If you don't have any other questions, I hope you are all coming back tomorrow for part 2 at 3 o'clock. I try to keep them all at the same time. And we'll pick up right after that accommodations list screen and go a little bit further, probably stop near the schedule of services page because that's a whole lot of discussion there. And then we'll wrap it up on Friday afternoon at 3. But make sure, again, that you put your name in the chat so that I can go back and look and make sure that you get credit for it. Hope you all have had a great week and that you start your day off well tomorrow.
Thanks so much.
No problem. Thank y'all.